top story for tonight, Bo Nix, the Denver quarterback, won, and it's not particularly close. Joining me tonight, Jonny Tooma at Fantasy Picasso. Jeez, oh Pete's. That's a wild stuff. Johnny, welcome. We're going to talk about Bo Nix. We're going to talk about Puka Nacua. We're going to talk about Brock Bowers. Any other big news that you want to hit on before we get into Bo Nix?
Check out playerprofiler.com/news for all of this stuff, including my weekly Dynasty Risers and Fallers series, where I'm digging into Player Profilers Dynasty Deluxe Kit and looking at our lifetime value ratings. I give away a little treat on that news feed every week for you guys, and I call out one of our top risers and fallers. So head over to playerprofiler.com/news so you can see who those are for this week. I just released those today. So had to plug that, Bradley.
Let's go.
That's all I wanted to talk about.
Fantastic. We're going to talk about all that more right after this. All right, before we get into Bo Nix, let's talk about those Dynasty Risers and Fallers. I love that weekly profile that Johnny does. We have Johnny who does the Dynasty Risers and Fallers. Jeremiah does the Best Ball Risers and Fallers. And that just fills the news feed because it's news. It shifts our opinion. Something is happening in the Dynasty streets. Something is happening in the Best Ball streets. And our big Dynasty Faller for this past week, Kyron Williams, obviously, if we need to stay on brand here, Player Profile, the anti-Kyron Williams propaganda is very, very strong, but that is continuing to be the case even into the beginning of August. Johnny, tell us a little bit more about what is going on with Kyron Williams dynasty stock.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the guy has a ton of upside for 2024, but the reality is they drafted Blake Corum in the 3rd round, and this guy is going to be there chomping at Kyron Williams' neck over the next couple of years. So as a dynasty manager, you have to look to get out. This is the time where the hype is so high on a guy who's going top 30 ADP in most formats. Capitalize while you can. So we're calling him out as one of the fallers in dynasty value in the month of August, just because it's such good reports coming out around what Corum's doing at camp and being kind of a like-for-like guy to Kyron Williams as well.
So, Johnny, I've got a trivia question for you. Who is Kyron Williams' best comparable player without looking? Who is his best comparable player on playerprofiler.com/NFL/Kyron Williams? Do you know?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was like Blake Corum. That's my guess. But I think Blake Corum, I know he's more athletic.
It is, you're going to, I don't know how you'll react to this. It's James White. James White. Now, here's the reason why this is wild. There's like 3 reasons why this is wild. One is every so often we update these best comparable players to better align with what the comps that we have and the new players now that we have more data. Originally, Kyron Williams' best comparable player was Theo Riddick, also an undersized pass-catching back out of Notre Dame, who was not as athletic. But the reason why Kyron Williams jumps into the James White comp is because if you remember way back in the day, it was James White and Rex Burkhead in the New England backfield. And James White finished as a PPR top 10 running back. He finished as an RB1 way back. You have to scroll all the way back in your Rolodex of fantasy history. 2018, he was a top 10 running back from the New England Patriots. But this is the thing. James White, the next year, running back 22. The next year, running back 44, and then phased out of the league. Look, Kyron Williams, I think his ceiling is still higher than your James White for this year. I think you're right. I think that the Rams do trust him. But look, the pathway for an athletic player freak like Blake Corum, the dynasty stock needs to continue to fall for a Kyron Williams. I agree with you, and I think Player Profile is right here.
Yeah. That's a terrible comp, though, man. I mean, like, Not saying it's wrong, but it just, to your point, you hear it, you're like, gross. I want out of the Kyron Williams business, right?
Whereas your dynasty riser for this week, Kyle Pitts, people have been joking that we'll just go back to the Kyle Pitts. Well, 99 percentile athleticism. This is a player that got the draft capital. Maybe he'll be used right. But talk to us about why Kyle Pitts is the big riser here for Player Profiler.
Listen, there's factors, right? And it's a reason to get excited. And to your point, I know you've been hurt before, fantasy managers, but listen, they acquired Kirk Cousins this offseason, and this guy targets tight ends and really propelled TJ Hawkinson to multiple top 4 finish. So I think Pitts is going to see the benefits from that. They have a new offense that's more focused on the pass with Zach Robinson from the Rams. We love that Rams offense, and I think we would all want a piece of any notable weapon involved in it. So this is also a guy who's recovering from a substantial knee injury, right? Kyle Pitts. And it's that second year when they really come back and they're themselves. And so I think you're going to see all of these factors, the stars aligned for Kyle Pitts, a fully healthy guy with a quarterback who likes to target tight ends, in an offense that is schemed up by someone who should be regarded as a pretty sharp guy in the game. So I know he's disappointed you before, but that actually kind of makes his price a little bit palatable and makes him a dynasty riser and a buy.
Ooh, there we go. So Kyle Pitts, we're in on Kyle Pitts for this year. I've been in on Kyle Pitts every year, and it's backfired every
out on
year.
Kyle Pitts. Name one person who's out, or who was originally out.
That's great. Well, we're going to shift gears here to news out of Denver Broncos camp. It's clear that Bo Nix is poised to win the quarterback battle for the Denver Broncos. He was selected in the first round by Sean Payton, handpicked. The Broncos weren't willing to move up into that upper echelon of quarterback. They felt like they were going to be able to get their guy. Many teams had Bo Nix as like a second round grade. Definitely not in that same tier. But here's something interesting. I pulled it up about Bo Nix. Out of 142 qualified quarterbacks in 2023 in college, so 142, Bo Nix ranked 129th in 20 or more yard attempt rate.
Wow.
So he was, we talk about, Bo Nix is accurate. Bo Nix, can get the ball to his guy. I mean, sure, if the guy is 3 yards down the field, like he is the quintessential Sean Payton, dump it off to the running back. We saw that last year. What the running backs, they're going to not only lead the NFL in running back targets, like as a position among NFL teams, but we could be looking at Jonathan Williams significantly paying off ADP despite the inefficiency and despite the grossness and despite the offseason tumult that his name has been dragged through the mud. Look, I'm an Audric Estime truther, but I'm an Audric Estime truther. Notre Dame through and through, go Irish. But regardless, you should be getting these Denver Broncos running backs on your fantasy teams because Nix isn't going to air it out. Like, I think this is partly bump up the running backs for the Broncos. And I think this delays or extinguishes any hope we have for Marvin Mims. He's going to win downfield. But how many times is Bo Nix going to throw the ball that far down the field? It's probably going to be Cortland Sutton who's going to get most of the downfield targets. So I think that this is, and you're also competing against a rookie, Troy Franklin, who has the shower narrative with Bo Nix. I think this is damning news for Marvin Mims from a fantasy perspective, and it's great news for the running backs. How are you interpreting this news that Bo Nix is the clear quarterback one for Denver?
Well, I thought it was wild when you started with the Bo Nix stat, a robust Bo Nix data statistic. I was like, oh no, here's some other stat about how this guy is amazing. Because on paper, like the stats are like ridiculous. But you found a chink in the armor there, right? Like for sure with that downfield. And I think everybody kind of knew that with the Oregon offense, but to your point, he's just unproven at pushing the ball down the field. He struggled in the SEC at Auburn. But when you were talking about all that, you say Javonte Williams, the other years here, your boy Jaleel McLaughlin, right? I think he is just such a target, especially like in full point PPR, to your point, where you can just you've taken that to the bank. That one of these guys is going to be catching at least 5 passes a game. So I agree with what you said there. You know, Troy Franklin, the reports out of camp haven't been amazing. I think they said he was like battling it out for a depth role behind Josh Reynolds and Cortland Sutton, obviously, and then Marvin Mims, right? But you've got to continue to hold out a bit of hope there that, what did you call it? What kind of narrative was it? The shower
narrative. Yeah.
They've been in the same shower together?
Tooma, and you've never heard the shower narrative?
Oh, like, what? Break it down. You were spitting some truth, so I'm like, what is he talking about?
The shower narrative. If they went to college together, you assume that they've showered in the same like communal shower together.
Got it. Okay.
There is a certain bond if you have showered in the same communal shower. Look, I'm trying to keep this PG-13. You know, that's the reality of the show. But you can read between the lines. If there is that bond that exists, you're gonna throw to the guy that you have that bond with. So, you know,
this is like the all narrative player profiler today.
Shower narrative on player profiler today. But here we are. We are educating the public. We're educating Jonny Tooma. We're here. This is great. Shower narratives run through and through. It's why, you know, Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne work so well together. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase work so well together. It makes sense. Derek Carr and Devonta Adams. It was the shower narrative. That's all it was.
So wait, going off script a bit here. Do we believe in this roommate narrative of the offseason? Like you got your Kyle Pitts staying in the same room as Kirk Cousins. Are we taking that to the bank?
Probably not. Kirk Cousins is a pretty conservative dude, you know, and so not just roommates. You need more than that. Like in terms of like narratives, like intimacy narratives, it's definitely shower narrative near the top, and then it's like family vacation narrative together.
That's pretty intimate.
And then I think we can go to roommate narrative, and then I think at the bottom is like parking lot. Playing catch together, like Anthony Richardson, Josh Downs.
They are.
Yeah. If you remember that narrative of, oh, they're already playing catch in the parking lot. No, like whatever. Like okay. And then below that is the Aaron Rodgers, Malachi Corley, like you can stay at my other house, bro. Narrative. Okay. So yes, there is a hierarchy of narratives. I think this is a great. Thank you, Tooma. Now I've got an inspiration for a new article that I want to write in the hierarchy of narratives in and their fantasy relevance. This is going to win me an FSWA Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association Writers Award for this article. This is phenomenal. Thank you for the inspiration, Tooma. Look, we're having a great time here on Player Profile today with Jonny Tooma. We're discussing Dynasty Risers and Fallers for Player Profile. We talked about Bo Nix. We're going to talk about a few other important news items. But before we do, a word about the Player Profiler Draft Kit.
Hey, it's the Podfather. I have great news. The Draft Kit is live. It is world famous. Why? Because it is the best resource for winning fantasy football championships that exists. There are rankings and cheat sheets for every format you can imagine. We have projections both at the team level and the player level. And wherever you are, you can click on a player, open them up, and see in-depth written analysis about what to expect in fantasy football from that player this year. And then you can click on the team, and you can get even more in-depth analysis, all the drivers of fantasy production, both in a positive and negative direction for that team, including a signature trend. And the graphics are incredible. So these team insights, they give you the team-level projections, the vacated targets, the vacated ARs. And we added a bunch of features. I mean, individual cheat sheets for Theo and Billy and Dario. So you could take your favorite analyst and download their personal draft cheat sheet And then in the commissioners section, Memphis Young lays out everything you need to know to manage a league. The best minds in the industry contributing analysis. Is certainly not the most inexpensive draft kit on the market, but it is the best. Playerprofiler.com/draftkit. Playerprofiler.com/draftkit. Go get it.
That's right. Go get your draft kit on Player Profiler. And you're also going to read in the draft kit a little blurb about Jonathan Brooks. Now, word from the Carolina Panthers and Dave Canales is that Jonathan Brooks is going to miss the first few, he's going to miss all the preseason, and he may not be ramped up until week 3 or 4. So here's the thing. In my write-up about Jonathan Brooks, I said, I don't care whether he is getting quote-unquote ramped up for the first few weeks. He is a must-draft steal because we saw what Rachaad White was able to do last year in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. And you can't tell me that Jonathan Brooks with half an ACL can't be more efficient than Rachaad White between the tackles. Like Rachaad White, I love him as a pass catcher. He is just not
you got to chill.
Good. He is just not good between the tackles. And so, Brooks offers this amazing upside, tantalizing upside, a 91.9 PFF rush grade, 3.1991 yards after contact per attempt, 6.1 yards per carry. And even when he was backing up Bijan Robinson, he mimicked that type of efficiency. So he just got a bigger role and continued to be super efficient. He got the draft capital. And at the beginning of the year, we know we have information. We don't have to play the game of chicken with Jonathan Brooks. We know that we are just going to stash him as a flex on the bench, the next flex off the bench for the first couple weeks, and then just ramp it up. We saw what happened with Todd Gurley a couple years ago, and I'm very, very confident, Tooma. I don't care that, Jonathan Brooks is going to maybe miss the first couple games, because I can just take Chuba Hubbard in round 14, 15 and just cruise on through, and we'll call ourselves a day. So are you as optimistic about Jonathan Brooks, or are you going to just rain on my parade?
Well, no, I'm just like, I think there was some teach tape in there when you talked about how you're architecting a team. It sounded like you were saying you're targeting him right after you filled up your lineup, right? Like, you don't want to reach for him and draft him at a spot where like he's in your starting lineup within one of those first like 8 rounds, right? But if you can start to build on him after that, then you feel like you're taking candy from a baby because you've got your starters established, and then he can start to add some value for you as he gets ramped up. So I thought that was just an interesting kind of piece that you were saying that I picked up on. But I also like at the end what you said, because personally, like, I'm always injury averse, for better or for worse. I was very, very bearish on Breece Hall last year, which didn't work out well for me, right? But I have really liked Hubbard's price just because I'm like, all right, this is a guy who already they liked. Brooks is going to be getting ramped up somewhat, right? And now it's in writing out there basically that this guy's hoping to play by like week 4. So you're going to get at least a little bit of maybe a few usable weeks with Hubbard. You're probably going to get a lot more with Brooks, but that price is just substantially higher with Brooks. But it is a discount if you paint it through the light of this is a guy who could come on late at the end of the year and win you leagues. So I don't have a lot of Brooks, but now I think this is good news because it'll push his value down a little bit, and the real gangsters will dig in. And I think I'm going to dig in with you.
Real gangsters for real. Chuba Hubbard was sneaky good in 2023, despite how disastrous the Panthers were. He had over 900 rushing yards, and he was 13th among qualified running backs in PFF rush grade. Like, what? And people will come back and be like, oh, we only had like 3.8 yards per carry, blah, blah, blah. Because he had the second most defenders in the box. Right. Like all teams were doing was disrespecting Bryce Young. They were like, well, we'll just make Bryce Young beat us. Like, for real, though. And so now we've got Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette. We've got Jatavion Sanders. There are other pieces in this offense that are usable. And that's why you're going to see a little bit more breathing room for Chuba Hubbard. You're going to see more breathing room for Jonathan Brooks. So I'm here for that.
I want to hear your thoughts on this. What about Dave Canales? Like, you say all those names, and I'm like, I'm really the type of guy who believes that a guy like him who's like, I just did this with Geno. I just did this with Baker. Like, you're like, I'm like, that's the biggest addition they made by far, is a guy who's going to just run the team differently. And then the next thing you know, the defenses are actually scared. And so I don't know if it's as much about the players on the field to me, but I'm curious if, like, when you feel or hear these coaching changes, like, how much do you kind of like, again, Zach Robinson going to Bijan? I'm like, perfect. We've got CMC too, like a clone out there. So what's your stance on like the coaching changes and how big of a consideration you take that into?
So it's kind of nuanced a little bit in terms of, it depends on each of the positions and what type of coach they are. So like in the instance of an Arthur Smith, like he is definitely like in the bell curve of coaches, we don't trust him for fantasy, right. But he is willing to give opportunities to players. And so really what coaches do, they will really affect the running back room in terms of who do we trust to just handle the ball. Whereas you just don't want a coach who is on the wrong side of the bell curve, like very far on the outside of the bell curve when it comes to play calling, because then it ultimately comes down to talent. Like, what talent exists within this scheme that's not going to hold back the players. And most coaches aren't going to get in the way of that. So that typically has impacts like wide receivers and tight ends, because when they're on the field, like the quarterback is the one who's reading the defense. They're the one who, catches the snap. They're the ones who looks around, goes through their reads. They see who's open, and they're the ones who's capable of making the throw. Whereas if the ball is being handed off, like 99% of the time, that's the coach's decision to just hand it off. Yeah. So it's really coach driven in terms of, as long as the coach isn't a complete idiot, it's wide receivers and tight end talent that will win out. But that's why opportunity matters so much for running backs in fantasy football. Do the coaches trust them to run the ball? So, Dave Canales clearly has put his trust in the quarterbacks to make them read. If you think about when Geno Smith was first drafted, it was a disaster zone for the New York Jets, right? It was absolutely terrible, but that Jets team was a disaster, right? Overall. So you wonder if he even had a chance in terms of what coaching was happening for the New York Jets. And same thing with Baker. Like, the Browns were idiots to let him go, and then he goes to Carolina. And then, the Carolina Panthers, do you remember this news item in the middle of camp when Baker Mayfield was playing defensive tackle for the Carolina Panthers in practice? It was wild. It was wild, Tooma. This is how stupid the Carolina Panthers were. And then they were like, well, we'll cut him, and the Rams signed him. And what does he do in game one? And he balls out. Like, he wasn't great, but he did the best that he could in the middle of the season.
I remember that game.
Right. Yeah. The first game, it was like a Thursday night. He had like two days to, like, I don't even know my left tackle's name. But he found a way to win. And so there are quarterbacks who have the dog mentality that if you got to go get it, you get it. And that's Baker Mayfield. And so Dave Canales has shown time and again that he can lean into these dog mentality type of quarterbacks and just allow them to work in the scheme that unlocks the offense a little bit more and allows them to do the quarterback things instead of getting in the way or giving them stupid reps like at defensive tackle, And so really, we're talking about 3 first-round pedigree quarterbacks, Geno and Baker, and now Bryce Young, that I think will fit really well for Canales. So I agree with you. I think Canales is one of those coaches that will be looking for ways to not get in the way of his players, that ultimately, like, he wants Deontay Johnson to go get go get the target. Like, where is Deontay? I joked in the previous player profiler today. One of the news items was Canales got up to the podium and was like, we're going to play the game. Where in the world is Deontay Johnson? Because that's get the ball to your guys. The game is very simple for smart coaches. And, the simple answer is the ball is going to get to Deontay Johnson. And I think Canales, you're right, is good. Speaking of good players, Devonta Smith is having himself a heck of a camp, according to all the beat writers, according to everyone, that's watching. And he's quote unquote crushing it and has been quote unquote unguardable, especially out of the slot. And we've seen the slot be very successful for the Kellen Moore offenses. He's had back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons. Realistically, is beating out A.J. Brown within the range of outcomes for Devonta Smith?
Are you asking me that seriously? Aren't you the guy taking like A.J. Brown 101 in drafts?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It was a loaded question, Tooma. I have 36% exposure across like 550 drafts in best ball on A.J. Brown. But here's the thing. Like, I'll sprinkle in some so full. Like, literally, if I'm right, I will be so rich. But this is one of those players that I'll take a step back. One of my friends, Felix Castro, he won the $1 million best ball tournament for DK a couple years ago. And he employs an interesting method for his best ball teams. He'll select a player. I know I'm oversimplifying this strategy, but essentially he'll select one player per year. And that's his staple guy. And he's going to draft a massive amount of that guy, even if it's a little bit of a reach, because all he wants is combinations of different teams with that guy as the center. And so I'm trying that this year with AJ Brown as my centerpiece guy, and just seeing what unique builds I can get with an AJ Brown. So, AJ Brown is my wide receiver 4 and my 6th overall player on the FFPC tight end premium formats. We're here for AJ Brown. I'm a believer that Devonta Smith will still be very good, but the increased pace of play is what I'm very excited about in terms of the Eagles.
Right. Another coach change kind of thing to dig into right here, right? It's just with Kellen Moore there. It's like, do you start to see a bit of a more air raid type of offense? Will that work for a guy like Jalen Hurts, So I'm really interested to see that offense, but you always get excited when you hear that the receivers are moving around more, right? So I think you've been hearing that Devonta Smith's been playing more from the slot, right, in camp. So we'll see if that actually all bodes out. I just like, he's a great best ball target, but I wish he was a little more consistent from week to week and like for regular fantasy football, But Devonta Smith, man, Slim Reaper, incredibly talented player.
Oh, for sure. Extremely talented. The last players that we'll talk about for about a minute, Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers. There are reports now that the Raiders are going to employ a lot of 2 tight end sets. And real talk, this kind of makes sense, Tooma, given that Trey Tucker has just been pooping the bed, as the kids say. He has been terrible in the slot, reportedly out of camp. So it's going to be Devontae Adams. It's going to be Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, and Michael Mayer, who are the primary pass catchers. I mean, I don't hate it, but it definitely limits the upside of both Bowers and, maybe it keeps Mayer up there.
No, you've got your new slot receiver, Brock Bowers, baby. / running back.
/ running back. Oh, man, you're drinking
Theo's going to love this.
Oh, my God. Yeah, Theo and I see Brock Bowers very differently. Theo has Brock Bowers is like a top 5 tight end, and I have him like tight end 15. So, we
we'll see.
That's why we play this game, Tooma. We play this game. The other part, Tooma, is with the 500 something drafts that I've done, so many times I've seen Brock Bowers fall. I've just gotten him a round or a round and a half after ADP. I don't see that a lot else other than maybe Dallas Goedert. But for most of the tight ends, they stay pretty close to the ADP, and I'm not seeing a lot of value or like in the occasional draft them dropping. So that's another reason why I'm a little wary of, when I'm in these drafts, who is we're just going to see how far we can push them guys that the market is telling me. So that's one of the reasons too, that while my projections are, nice and robust, I think you can find values comparable to Brock Bowers year one in the best ball streets that, are cheaper you can build a Brock Bowers in round 16, 17, 18 with your tight ends and we'll figure it out.
Dude,
he was going to hate that take, but
no, I mean, best ball this year, it's a different story, right? He is a rookie at the end of the day, but in Dynasty, you got to be really excited about him. I will admit, David Njoku, that's my plug. That's my most owned tight end. Because to your point, like I find myself getting him, and I'm like, so I've got a guy I have over Jake Ferguson, over Brock Bowers, and I'm getting him. Maybe sometimes he'll fall around, and I'm just like, this is great. That guy's a 90 on Madden, which those ratings are trash, but he's the 5th tight end by ratings. So, but I think there is a skosh of truth to that. This is one of the most talented tight ends in the game, in my opinion. So that's your David Njoku plug as kind of that 0 tight end build. If you're kicking it a little bit, I don't know. That's my guy. I'm calling it out.
All right. Well, Tooma, it's been great having you on. We're going to bring it to a close. At Fantasy Picasso on the X Machine, what other things do you want to drop outside of the Dynasty Rising followers that you put weekly on playerprofile.com/news?
Listen, we're going to be doing, I don't know. What do you want me to plug up here, Bradley?
Look, well, we'll also say that Tooma is taking over Thursdays. Tooma Takeover.
Tell him.
We're going to call that Tooma Takeover. He's taking over Player Profiler News on Thursdays once the season starts. He'll be going through a lot of the news and then also giving you Thursday night preview about what's going down. We're very, very excited for that development. And since I won't be on Thursdays anymore, you'll start to see me on Man vs. Machine with Ryan Reynolds. That will be every other week in August. And we'll still be doing Stack Hunters as well with Dan Williamson. So it's going to be a great, set of shows on my side. And that's why Tooma has taken over Tooma Takeover on Thursdays during the season for Player Profiler Today. Let's see. What else is Tooma doing? Oh, you've got, oh my gosh, you got so much. You're doing undroppables things, right?
Yeah, I do cover the Broncos. I will be covering them in season for the undroppables. And then I also, on the Fantasy Plus network, do Best Ball Brawl, where I live stream fast drafts. Man, I can't wait till they release some more 10-second drafts on Underdog. I'm going to be in there ripping them on live stream. You're just going to be watching me paying the rake. What's more fun than that?
Maybe winning, Wouldn't
it be super cool to look back and be like, damn, I live streamed the draft that I won $50K. So, whatever it is. So, and share that experience with you all. There's nothing more I'd rather do.
This is so exciting. Jonny Tooma at Fantasy Picasso, one of the senior analysts here at Player Profiler, one of the content editors here at Player Profiler News, really helps me out with my role. For those who don't know, like I'm a principal by day, and so I can't always be checking my phone. So Tooma and Brendan and John and Mike and Jeremiah have all stepped up as well to assist with that. And so, look, the reality is that we're gonna have an awesome season with Tooma at the helm on Thursdays, Man vs. Machine on Wednesdays. We're going to be bringing it to you here on the Player Profiler and Player Profiler News networks. Until next time, everyone, good luck in fantasy football streets.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.